Your dog's final moments contain a truth science has only just begun to understand. There is a moment every dog owner dreads, a quiet room, a still breath, eyes that slowly close and don't open again. Most people call it an ending, but what if it isn't only that? What if everything happening in those final hours, the way your dog looks at you, presses close, rests its head against your leg, is something far more intentional than you ever imagined? Researchers studying animal cognition, end-of-life behavior, and the neuroscience of grief have found something quietly stunning. Two perspectives exist in that room, two forms of understanding, completely different and yet perfectly connected. Most of us walk away carrying the weight of what we saw, but we never stop to ask what our dog actually experienced in those moments. And that question, it turns out, changes everything. Because what science now suggests is that a dying dog doesn't process the world the way you do. It doesn't feel the countdown. It doesn't carry the future, it only carries you. Neuroscientist Gregory Burns spent years scanning the living, conscious brains of dogs. What he found rattled decades of assumption. Dogs don't just respond to humans, they orient their entire emotional architecture around us. The canine brain activates its reward center, the caudate nucleus, at the sound, scent, or presence of its owner, not only during play, not only at feeding time. It happens continuously, instinctively, always. That isn't simple conditioning. That is a deep neurological bond, one that science now classifies as comparable to the attachment a human infant forms with its primary caregiver during the earliest days of life. Research in animal thanatology, the scientific study of dying in non-human animals, reveals that dogs near the end of their lives display measurable behavioral shifts, not primarily of pain, but of profound, narrowing focus. That focus narrows toward the familiar, toward scent, toward voice, toward the human who has been the emotional center of the dog's universe from the very first day they came home together. Meanwhile, the human in that same room is doing something entirely different. They are anticipating, remembering, bracing, experiencing a kind of suffering that their dog, beautifully, mercifully, cannot access. Two brains, two realities, one small room. And what science reveals about both of them will quietly shift the way you understand every single moment you still have left together. You've probably noticed that dogs sense when something is wrong before anyone speaks. They circle, they press close, they follow you room to room with a quiet urgency that feels almost deliberate, almost knowing. For years, we called this anxiety, the dog responding to stress with clinginess, nervous energy, a need for constant reassurance. We reduced it to something behavioral and moved on. We completely missed the point. What animal behaviorists now understand is that this behavior isn't anxiety at all, it's attunement. Your dog's nervous system is literally calibrating to yours, tracking your breath rate, your heartbeat, the cortisol signature you release into the air. When you are in emotional pain, your dog isn't confused. It's anchoring itself to you, choosing proximity as its only language for something it cannot express in any other way. Here is what most people never consider. Your dog has no concept of its own death approaching. It cannot project itself forward into a future where it no longer exists. That cognitive space simply isn't part of its brain. This sounds like a limitation. For a long time, science treated it exactly that way, a cognitive gap, an emotional blind spot, something missing in an otherwise extraordinary animal. But that framing is completely backward. The absence of mortality awareness isn't a deficit. It is a profound and radical form of freedom, one that human beings spend entire lifetimes trying to reach through practice and discipline. In its final days, your dog isn't mourning what it's losing. It isn't cataloguing regrets or bracing in against an ending. It is simply, fully, completely, without reservation, present with you, and that is everything. You, however, are doing something entirely different. You are watching, calculating, counting breaths, thinking about tomorrow and how the house will feel with one fewer heartbeat moving through its rooms. Human grief frequently begins before the loss. Scientists call this anticipatory grief, a neurological mourning that starts the moment you understand something irreplaceable is leaving. Your brain begins processing the absence before it even arrives. The anterior cingulate cortex, the brain region that processes both physical and emotional pain, activates identically for both. Losing a dog is not metaphorically painful. Biologically speaking, it is indistinguishable from physical injury. And yet, in the same room, your dog registers none of this weight. It feels your warmth, your hand, the steady rhythm of your presence, and that, to your dog, is the entirety of the world. One of the most consistently documented behaviors in dogs approaching the end of their lives is purposeful movement toward their owner, even when movement is difficult, even when it costs them physically, they still come. Veterinarians who work in end-of-life animal care describe this again and again. A dog that can barely stand will cross a room to reach its person. The body may be failing, the bond does not. That movement is not random, it is the entire relationship condensed to a single act, a choice, made in the most stripped-down moment possible, about where safety lives and who it lives with. Many people describe their dog, in its final hours, becoming suddenly still. The restlessness fades, breathing slows. The dog turns its face toward its person with something that looks unmistakably, undeniably, like peace. We often interpret this as surrender, the dog giving up, exhausted, defeated. We read human emotional templates into the image because those are the only ones we carry. Science, as always, tells a different story. Endogenous opioids flood the system in the final stages of dying, the brain's own natural painkillers releasing in full. Alongside this, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, elevates measurably in the presence of a trusted companion. That calm is not defeat, that stillness is not absence. It is your dog arriving at the most complete version of safety it has ever known, held in the one place it has always called home, beside you. In those final hours, many dogs seek eye contact, long, steady, searching. The kind of gaze that makes your chest tighten because it feels weighted with something just beyond the reach of language. And it is. Most owners believe the dog is confused, searching for help or asking for something. And while some of that may be present, brain imaging research points to something running far deeper than any single emotion. Mutual eye contact between a dog and its owner produces a measurable rise in oxytocin in both, a neurochemical bonding loop that closely mirrors what occurs between mother and infant during early attachment formation. Your dog isn't staring because it's afraid, it's staring because, at the level of pure neurochemistry, looking at you is the closest it can come to saying, "You are my entire world and I am at peace inside it." Dogs can also detect dying, not metaphorically but literally. Their olfactory system can perceive chemical concentrations 100,000 times lower than what human senses detect, including the biological markers of terminal illness. Hospice programs around the world have documented dogs and other animals who seek out dying patients with startling, unexplained precision. They don't need to be guided, they already know. They go there anyway. What draws them is not morbid curiosity. Research suggests it is the same ancient attunement that drives your dog toward you when you cry, a deep-coded orientation toward vulnerability in those they are bonded to. Your dog has likely been reading the chemistry of your body for years. In its final days, it turns that same extraordinary perception inward, reading its own fading signal and moving instinctively toward the warmth it trusts most. There is another dimension to this that almost no one considers. Dogs grieve too. When an owner dies or a companion disappears, the change in their behavior is profound and entirely measurable by behavioral science. Studies tracking dogs after the loss of a human owner showed significant shifts: reduced appetite, social withdrawal, disrupted, and vocalizations that behaviorists describe as an active search for the missing attachment figure. What this reveals is that the bond you build with your dog is not one-directional. It is mutual, deeply embedded, and felt with an intensity that the animal has no mechanism for suppressing or intellectualizing away. Your dog doesn't know the word love. It doesn't need to. Love for your dog is a bodily state, a nervous system so consistently oriented toward you that you become its baseline definition of safety and home. Think about how long your dog has been studying you, years of watching your face, learning which footsteps mean you're happy, which silence means something is quietly wrong before you've spoken a single word. Researchers at the University of Helsinki found that dogs accurately identify human facial expressions, distinguishing fear, joy, sadness, and anger with remarkable consistency. They don't just react to you, they interpret you. That map of you was built slowly, in love. Every morning greeting, every ordinary Tuesday. Your dog was memorizing you, collecting pieces of who you are and holding them somewhere deep inside itself. And in its final moments, it draws on everything in that map. Not in thought, as we understand thought, but in something older, an emotional certainty that you are near and it is safe. That is what your dog brings to its goodbye. Not fear, not confusion, a lifetime of you, a nervous system calibrated entirely to your presence. A bond so complete it becomes the last thing the brain holds on to. Your grief in that room is real and enormous and entirely valid. Do not minimize it. The human brain is wired for attachment, and when that attachment is severed, the pain is neurologically the same as physical wounding. But hold this alongside your grief. While you are bracing for loss, your dog is not. While you feel the future collapsing, your dog is resting, anchored in the warmest, most familiar emotional space it has ever known. In the whole language your dog understood, which was never words but presence and warmth and consistency, you were fluent. Completely, effortlessly fluent, and it always knew. We spend so much time wondering if we were good enough, if we walked them enough, fed them well, gave them enough time. But that question fundamentally misunderstands what your dog actually needed from you. Your dog never audited you, never kept score. Every imperfect day you gave it was, in the only currency it understood, abundance. Because you showed up, you were there. And to your dog, that was everything. Science does not frame this as sentimentality. Attachment studies in animal cognition frame it as fundamental behavioral reality. To your dog, your presence wasn't a bonus feature of life. It was the structure that held life together. When you truly absorb that, you stop being just an owner. You become something harder to name but truer to what the relationship actually was. You were not merely caring for a pet. You were someone's entire world. That is not a small thing to have been. It is one of the most extraordinary things one living creature can be for another. And your dog chose you for it. Every single day, without hesitation, without condition. There are two goodbyes happening in that room. Yours full of memory and love and grief that has nowhere left to go. And your dog's quiet, warm, held inside everything you built together over years. Both are real. Both are profound. Understanding them together doesn't make the loss smaller, but it makes it, somehow, gently, more bearable. Because you know your dog did not suffer what you suffer. It felt you. It trusted you. It was with you until the very last signal its brain could carry. And that final signal, researchers believe, is warmth, familiarity, the neurological signature of home. If your dog has already crossed that threshold, carry this. They were not alone the way you feared. They were held, chemically, emotionally, neurologically, by the bond you spent years quietly and faithfully building. And if your dog is still here, still watching you with those ancient, patient, impossibly trusting eyes, now you know what those eyes are really saying. Not feed me, not walk me, just you, always only you. If this shifted something in you, share it with someone who loves their dog. Because some truths belong to everyone who has ever been chosen by an animal. And that is a quietly beautiful thing.